The total on her phone screen didn't match the woman I thought I knew. I wasn't even trying to look. She had just handed me her phone casually, laughing, asking me to check something in her messages. But for a second, just a second, I saw it. A banking app. A balance that made my chest tighten. Thousands. Not struggling. Not even close. And suddenly, every dinner. Every coffee. Every oh no, I forgot my wallet again replayed in my head like something dark clicking into place. My name is Melissa Carter. I'm 39 years old, a single mom, and for 15 years, I thought Tanya was my best friend. I trusted her with everything. My time, my home, my struggles. She was there when my son was born, when my marriage fell apart, when I had to rebuild my life from nothing. At least that's what I believed. Because the truth is, being a single mother changes how you see money. Every dollar matters. Every small expense becomes a decision. Groceries or gas. New shoes for your kid or pushing it one more month. And yet, somehow, whenever I was with Tanya, I always ended up paying. Next time, I promise, she'd say, smiling, brushing it off like it was nothing. And I believed her. Every single time. Because that's what you do with someone you love. You don't keep score. You don't question motives. You don't assume that the person who's been in your life for over a decade could be quietly taking advantage of you. But now that number on her phone wouldn't leave my head. It didn't make sense. If she had money, real money, then why was I the one covering dinners, drinks, even her share of small weekend trips? Why did she always act like she was just getting by? I tried to tell myself I was overthinking it. That maybe there was an explanation. That maybe I hadn't seen what I thought I saw. But something inside me shifted in that moment. A quiet doubt. And once it was there, it refused to go away. Because the more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable the pattern became. And for the first time in 15 years, I found myself asking a question I never thought I would need to ask. Was my best friend really my friend at all? Or had I been used this entire time without even realizing it? At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being unfair. Suspicious. That maybe I had seen the wrong screen, or misunderstood what that number meant. Tanya had always been a certain way. Carefree. A little disorganized. The kind of person who laughed things off instead of stressing about them. That's what I loved about her. Or at least, what I thought I loved. That evening, we met for dinner like we had done hundreds of times before. Same place. Same table near the window. The familiar clinking of glasses, the low hum of conversations around us, the smell of something warm and comforting in the air. For a moment, everything felt normal again. Tanya was talking about work, about some minor drama with her coworkers, laughing in that easy, effortless way that used to relax me instantly. I nodded, smiled, played my role. But something had shifted. I was watching her now. Not as a friend, but as someone trying to understand a pattern. When the bill came, it happened exactly the way it always did. She reached for her bag. Paused. "Oh my God, Melissa, I did it again," she said, laughing lightly. "I left my wallet in my other purse." The words landed differently this time. Before, I would have smiled. Brushed it off. Said, "Don't worry, I've got it." And I still did. But this time I noticed everything. The way she didn't even really check. The way her tone wasn't apologetic, just automatic. The way she didn't hesitate, not even for a second, like she already knew how this would go. Next time, I swear, she added, reaching for her drink again. Next time. I couldn't remember the last time next time had actually happened. Driving home that night, my hands tightened on the steering wheel. My mind replayed years of small moments I had never questioned before. Coffee runs. Movie nights. Weekend trips. Tiny expenses that didn't feel like much at the time, but added together it wasn't small anymore. It was a pattern. And patterns don't happen by accident. The next few days, I started paying attention in a way I never had before. Not just to what she said, but to what she didn't say. Not just to her words, but to the timing, the pauses, the expectations. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. There was always something. A forgotten card. A delayed transfer that never came. A vague excuse that somehow never needed follow-up. And every time, I stepped in. Because that's what I thought friendship was. But now, for the first time, a different thought crept in. Quiet. Uncomfortable. What if this wasn't forgetfulness? What if it was a choice? And if it was a choice, then what did that say about her? Or worse, what did that say about me for allowing it for so long? The memory hit me unexpectedly. It was late at night, and I was sitting alone in the kitchen, staring at my phone, going over everything again. The quiet in the apartment felt heavier than usual. Noah was asleep. The world had slowed down. And that's when it came back to me. 15 years ago. Back when everything in my life had fallen apart. I was 24, scared, pregnant, and completely alone. My ex had walked away like it was nothing. No explanation. No responsibility. Just gone. I remember sitting on the edge of a narrow bed in a tiny apartment I could barely afford, trying to figure out how I was supposed to survive. And Tanya was there. She showed up with groceries when I had nothing in the fridge. She stayed the night when I was too scared to be alone. She held my hand in the hospital when Noah was born. "You're not alone," she had whispered to me back then. "I've got you." For years, that moment defined everything between us. It became something unspoken. Something sacred. And maybe something I never questioned. Because how do you question someone who stood by you at your lowest? How do you measure that kind of support? How do you ever say no to someone who once saved you? I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Was that it? Was this what I had been missing? A quiet, invisible balance that had been forming all these years? Because the more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable the idea became. Had Tanya always seen it that way? Not as friendship, but as a debt? The next time we met, I decided to test something. Not directly. Not aggressively. Just a small shift. We went out for coffee. Same routine. Same casual energy. And when it came time to pay, I didn't reach for my wallet right away. I waited. Just for a second. Tanya glanced at me. Then at the cashier. Then back at me again. A pause. Small. Almost invisible. But it was there. "Oh, I think my card isn't working today," she said quickly, already stepping back slightly. Too quickly. Like she had rehearsed it. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. Recognition. Because for the first time, I wasn't just hearing her words. I was seeing the pattern behind them. And it didn't feel accidental anymore. It felt practiced. And that was the moment something inside me shifted again. Because if this wasn't random, then it meant one thing. She knew exactly what she was doing. For a while, I tried to justify it. That was the hardest part to admit. Not what Tanya was doing, but what I was doing in response. Because once the idea of debt got into my head, it didn't leave. It grew. Quietly. Persistently. It started rewriting memories, reshaping moments I thought I understood. Maybe I did owe her. The thought felt uncomfortable but also strangely logical. I sat on the edge of my bed one night, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything again. All the things she had done for me back then. The nights she stayed. The support. The way she never made me feel alone. What if this was just her way of balancing things out? Not asking directly. Not keeping score out loud. But expecting it, silently. And if that was true, then wasn't I the one being unfair now? The next time we met, I decided to bring it up. Carefully. Gently. We were sitting in her car, parked outside a grocery store. The engine was still running, soft music playing in the background. It felt like a safe space. Neutral. Tanya, I said slowly, keeping my tone light, can I ask you something? She smiled. Of course. I hesitated for a second. Then pushed through. Do you ever feel like I don't know, like I owe you? For everything back then? There was a pause. Just a fraction of a second. But I saw it. A flicker in her expression. Gone almost immediately. Oh, Melissa, she said softly, almost laughing. Why would you even think that? Her tone was warm. Reassuring. Too reassuring. I mean, you've just always been there for me, I added, trying to explain myself. And sometimes I wonder if maybe I haven't. Hey, she interrupted gently, placing her hand over mine. You're overthinking this. That phrase again. Overthinking. You don't owe me anything, she continued, her voice calm, almost soothing. We're friends. That's what friends do. I nodded slowly. It sounded right. It felt right. But something inside me didn't fully settle. Because if that was true, then why did I still feel like I was being pulled into something I didn't fully understand? Why did every situation somehow end the same way? Why did I always walk away feeling slightly off? I just don't want things to feel uneven, I said quietly. They're not, she replied instantly. Too instantly. And then she smiled. That same familiar smile I had trusted for years. Seriously, Melissa. You worry too much. We sat there for a moment in silence. The music still playing. The engine humming softly. Everything looked normal. Felt normal. But inside, something didn't match. Because her words were perfect. Too perfect. And for the first time, I started to wonder. Was she reassuring me? Or controlling the way I saw things? After that conversation, I stopped trusting the feeling. I needed proof. Not emotions. Not guesses. Not the quiet voice in my head that kept telling me something was wrong. I needed something real. Something I could point to and say, "This is not in my imagination." So I started keeping track. At first, it felt ridiculous. Almost embarrassing. I opened the Notes app on my phone and wrote down the date of our next coffee. The total. Who paid? It was supposed to be a one-time thing. Just to calm myself down. But it didn't stop there. Dinner the next week. Same result. A movie night after that. Same pattern. Groceries we picked up together. "I'll send you my half later." She never did. I began scrolling back through my bank statements late at night, the glow of my screen lighting up the dark room while Noah slept in the next one. $32. $18. $64. $27. Small numbers. But they added up. Fast. Too fast. And the more I looked, the worse it felt. Not just because of the money, but because of what it represented. Consistency. This wasn't occasional. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was a system. A quiet, well-practiced system that relied on one thing. Me not paying attention. A week later, I got my first real chance. We met for lunch at a small cafe downtown. It was busy, the kind of place where everything moved quickly, where no one paid attention to anyone else. Perfect. Halfway through the meal, Tanya got up. "I'm just going to the restroom," she said, grabbing her phone. And then she left her bag. On the chair. Right next to me. For a second, I didn't move. My heart started beating faster, louder than it should have been for something so small. This wasn't me. I wasn't the kind of person who went through someone else's things. But then that number flashed in my mind again. That balance. That lie. Slowly, almost automatically, I glanced at her bag. It wasn't even closed properly. Her wallet was right there. Visible. Easy to reach. I swallowed. This was it. A simple answer to a question that had been building for weeks. I reached out. Hesitated. Then stopped. Pulled my hand back. Because something about it felt wrong. Not morally. But strategically. If I was right, if this wasn't random, then I didn't need to prove she had a wallet. I needed to catch her pretending she didn't. And that required something else. Timing. Patience. And for the first time, I realized something that made my stomach turn. I wasn't just observing anymore. I was waiting. Waiting for my best friend to slip. I didn't have to wait long. A few days later, Tanya texted me. "Hey, are you free tonight? I really need to get out of the house." Something about the message felt intentional. Not urgent. Not emotional. Just timed. Like she knew I wouldn't say no. And she was right. We met at a casual restaurant not far from my place. Nothing fancy. Soft lighting, low music, the kind of place where conversations blur into the background. She looked completely normal. Relaxed. Smiling. Like nothing had changed. But I wasn't the same anymore. I watched everything. Every word. Every pause. Every movement. Halfway through dinner, she told a story about work, something about a coworker messing up a project. She laughed. Rolled her eyes. Took a sip of her drink. And then the bill came. This time, I didn't move. Not even a little. I leaned back slightly in my chair and waited. Tanya reached for her bag. Opened it. And for a split second, just a second, I saw it. Her wallet. Right there. Exactly where I knew it would be. My stomach dropped. She saw it too. I know she did. Because her hand paused. Just briefly. And then, like it had never been there, she shifted her fingers, moved things around, and closed the bag halfway. "Oh no," she said softly. "Melissa, I think I left my card at home." There it was. Clear. Calm. Practiced. A lie. Not a mistake. Not confusion. A decision. I felt something inside me snap into place. All the doubt. All the questions. All the internal debates I had been having for weeks, gone. Replaced by something sharp. Certainty. "You don't have anything?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She shook her head, not even looking embarrassed. "No, I swear. I don't know how I keep doing this." She even laughed. Laughed. Like it was a joke. Like I wasn't sitting there, watching her pretend. Watching her lie directly to my face. And in that moment, I realized something that hit harder than anything else. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the fact that she thought I wouldn't notice. That I wouldn't question it. That I would just continue playing my role. I reached for my wallet slowly. Paid the bill. Just like always. But this time, something was different. Because as I signed the receipt, one thought kept repeating in my head, louder with every second. How many times has she done this knowing exactly what she was doing? And more importantly, how far was she willing to go? After that night, something in me went cold. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just clear. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't trying to justify her behavior or twist it into something softer, something harmless. The truth had already shown itself. Now it was just a matter of how far it went. And how long it had been happening. So I stopped reacting. That was the biggest change. I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse her. I didn't even pull away, not yet. I stayed exactly the same on the outside. But inside, everything had shifted. I started watching with intention. The next time she said, "I'll send you my half later," I didn't nod and forget. I waited. 1 day passed. Then 2. Then a week. Nothing. No message. No transfer. Not even a mention. So I brought it up. Casually. Light. Like it didn't matter. "Hey, did you still want to send that from last week?" I asked over text. Her reply came quickly. "Oh my God, yes. I totally forgot. I'll do it tonight." Tonight. I stared at the message longer than I should have. Because I already knew what was going to happen. And still a part of me hoped I was wrong. That maybe this time would be different. It wasn't. That night came and went. Then another. Nothing. No transfer. No apology. No follow-up. Just silence. And that silence said more than any explanation ever could. A few days later, we met again. Same rhythm. Same dynamic. She talked. I listened. She laughed. I smiled. But underneath it all, I was counting. Every word. Every pattern. Every repetition. At one point, she mentioned something casually, something small, almost throwaway. I finally booked that trip I told you about, she said, scrolling through her phone. It was expensive, but honestly, I needed it. Expensive. The word hit differently now. I felt my chest tighten. Because in my head, numbers started aligning. The dinners. The coffees. The forgotten payments. And now this. A trip she could afford. While I was covering her life, piece by piece. I nodded slowly, forcing a smile. That's nice, I said. But inside something cracked. Not loudly. Not visibly. But permanently. Because for the first time, I stopped seeing her as someone who needed help. And started seeing her as someone who had made a choice. A repeated choice. A calculated one. And then a thought crossed my mind that made my stomach drop. If she was this comfortable lying about small things, then what else had she been lying about all these years? The confirmation came when I wasn't even looking for it. That's what made it worse. Because until that moment, a small part of me still wanted to believe this was just between us. Something complicated. Misunderstood. Personal. But it wasn't. It was a pattern. And I wasn't the only one inside it. It happened on a random Thursday afternoon. I had a short break between errands and decided to stop by a small cafe near Noah's school. It wasn't a place Tanya and I usually went to, which is probably why I felt relaxed walking in. Safe. Like I could breathe for a second without analyzing everything. I ordered a coffee and was about to sit down when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Tanya. I froze. Instinctively, I stepped slightly to the side, just enough to see without being seen. She was sitting at a table near the back. But she wasn't alone. There was another woman with her. Someone I had seen before, briefly, at a birthday dinner months ago. I didn't know her well, but I recognized her face. They were laughing. Talking easily. It looked familiar. Too familiar. I told myself to leave. To not do this. To not stand there and listen like some stranger spying on a conversation. But then I heard it. I swear, I always forget my wallet, Tanya said, laughing lightly. My stomach dropped. The other woman laughed too. Same. It's the worst. No, but seriously, Tanya continued, lowering her voice just slightly. She always ends up paying. I don't even think she notices anymore. My heart stopped. She always ends up paying. She doesn't even notice. The words echoed in my head, louder than anything else in that cafe. I couldn't breathe for a second. Because this wasn't about confusion anymore. This wasn't about misunderstanding. This was awareness. This was intention. And worst of all, this was something she talked about casually. Like it was normal. Like it was nothing. I stood there, completely still, my coffee forgotten in my hand. The world around me blurred into background noise. Cups clinking. Chairs moving. People talking. None of it mattered. Because in that moment, something inside me broke in a way I couldn't undo. Not just trust. Not just friendship. Something deeper. Respect. For her. And for myself. Because suddenly, a question hit me harder than anything before. If she could sit there and joke about using me, then how long had I been the joke? I didn't confront her that day. I walked out of the cafe like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just heard my best friend casually admit to using me. But inside everything was different. Because now I wasn't searching for answers anymore. I already had them. What I needed now was to understand how deep it went. And for that, I needed something more than a conversation overheard by accident. I needed proof she couldn't explain away. That opportunity came sooner than I expected. A few days later, Tanya came over to my place. It wasn't unusual. She had a key. She came by all the time. My home had always been open to her. Too open, I realized now. We sat in the kitchen, drinking coffee while Noah played in the living room. The late afternoon light filled the space, everything calm, familiar, almost painfully normal. At some point, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it quickly, then stood up. "I'm just going to take this," she said, picking it up and stepping into the hallway. She left her bag again. And this time I didn't hesitate. Not out of curiosity. Out of certainty. I reached for her bag, my hand steady in a way that surprised even me. The wallet was right where I expected it to be. Inside, cards. Multiple. Perfectly fine. But that wasn't what I was looking for. Her phone lit up again from the hallway, a second notification. And for a brief moment she wasn't there. I picked it up. Just one glance. That's all it took. A banking notification. Transfer received, $120. My breath caught. I opened it. Another name. Not mine. Another person sending her money. Scrolling just a little further, more transactions. Different names. Different amounts. Small. Repeated. Familiar. My chest tightened as the realization hit, sharp and undeniable. It wasn't just me. It was never just me. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't even personal. This was a system. A pattern she had built, perfected, and repeated, with different people. And I was just one of them. One of many. I put the phone back exactly where it was, my movements slow, controlled. By the time she came back into the kitchen, smiling like nothing had happened, I was already sitting down again. Calm. Too calm. Because inside something had shifted completely. There was no confusion left. No doubt. No hesitation. Only one question remained. And it was no longer about her. It was about me. How much longer was I willing to let this continue? I waited until Tanya was settled on my couch before I spoke. "Melissa, are you okay?" she asked, her voice light, casual, like nothing had changed. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time in 15 years, I didn't feel like her friend. I felt exposed. Used. Angry. I slammed my coffee cup down on the table. "Do you know how many times I've covered for you?" I demanded, my voice shaking but loud enough to fill the room. She blinked, startled. "I don't know what you mean," she said, fumbling with her hands. I stood up, pointing to her phone. That's what I mean." She stiffened, her eyes narrowing. You went through my things. She snapped, venom creeping into her tone. I didn't flinch. Yes. Because I finally had to see it for myself. Your little system. All those transfers. All those people. All those lies. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. You don't understand, Melissa. No. You don't get to explain, I interrupted, my chest tight, my hands trembling. I trusted you. My son trusted you. My home was open to you. And I couldn't even finish. The anger, the hurt, the humiliation, it all crashed over me like waves I hadn't anticipated. You've been using me for years. And I never thought I'd be the one discovering it like some story online. I spat, words bitter, full of disbelief. She leaned back, her face pale. You're overreacting, she said, loud, desperate, trying to control the situation. But this time, her words didn't hold power over me. I could see through the calm facade, the excuses, the manipulations. I wasn't afraid anymore. And I wasn't going to let her walk over me. You want to know what's going to happen now? I said, voice low, sharp. I'm done pretending. I'm done forgiving without proof. And I'm done letting you treat me like this. This stops today. She tried to reach for me, tried to reason, but I stepped back, creating distance. No. You stay there. I need space. I need clarity. And I need everything out in the open. Her jaw dropped. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was a reckoning. A test of my strength, my boundaries, my self-respect. I could feel it in the room, in the way the air thickened, in the silence after my words landed. Everything I had believed about her, about our friendship, about loyalty, it was gone. Replaced by one question that would not leave me alone. How far had she really gone? How many people had been part of her scheme? And most importantly, what would I do about it? Tanya sank into the armchair, her face pale and rigid. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered, almost a plea. But her words sounded hollow. I paced the room, the anger still coiling inside me. 15 years. 15 years of trust, of shared secrets, of believing in a friendship I had thought unbreakable. And it all came crashing down in a single moment. I thought about my son, Noah. 8 years old. Bright, trusting, innocent. How would he understand betrayal? How would he learn to protect himself? The thought of him seeing me hurt, manipulated, humiliated, made my chest tighten. You used me, I said, voice cutting, precise. You used my home, my trust, my money, my kindness. And for what? Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't reach her soul. I needed help, she stammered. You needed me to cover your lies. 15 years of manipulation under the guise of friendship. I could feel the weight of every lie, every stolen moment, every excuse she had given. The room seemed smaller, heavier, as if the walls themselves were judging us. I clenched my fists. I could feel my body shaking, but this wasn't fear. It was resolve. From now on, I said, softer but unwavering, you are no longer welcome here. You are no longer part of my life. And you will never manipulate my son again. Her lips trembled. She opened her mouth, but I shook my head. No. Nothing you say can change what's done. I won't allow it. Not anymore. I could see disbelief flash across her face. She had underestimated me for 15 years. And now, finally, the tables had turned. I looked at my son playing nearby. His laughter was pure, untouched by deceit. That was my victory. That was my line. And as I walked toward the door, I felt the first stirrings of freedom, clarity, and unshakable strength. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need her lies. I didn't need her friendship. And I would never let anyone take that from me again. The next morning, I woke up with a strange calmness. The storm of the previous night had left me drained, but also determined. I knew what I had to do. I started by cutting all unnecessary contact with Tanya. I blocked her number, unfollowed her on social media, and informed her clearly that our friendship was over. It wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. It was about protecting Noah, about reclaiming the safety of our home and our hearts. Jason noticed the shift immediately. "You look different," he said cautiously as I packed a few boxes of things Tanya had left behind. I smiled faintly, but it wasn't happiness. It was resolve. I also took practical steps. I reviewed our finances, checked accounts, and ensured there were no hidden surprises. Every dollar, every document was now under my eyes. Tanya thought she could manipulate me because I trusted her blindly, but that trust had limits, and now I controlled the boundaries. I installed new security measures in the house, not because I feared Tanya physically, but to restore a sense of control. Every sound outside, every knock, felt safer when I knew exactly what was happening and who was involved. My home needed to feel like ours again. We spent the evening together, Jason, Noah, and I. Noah's laughter filled the house, free and carefree. And I realized how much I had allowed Tanya's manipulation to steal small pieces of this peace over the years. I wrote down my feelings, my boundaries, and even my rules for interactions with people I allowed into our lives. Writing made it real. It made me feel powerful in a way I hadn't in years. I even reached out to my mother, finally sharing the full truth. The woman who had always supported me listened quietly, then said, "Melissa, you're stronger than you realize." That night, I went to bed with a sense of accomplishment. Not because I had punished Tanya, but because I had reclaimed my life, my space, my trust. And as I watched Noah sleep, I promised myself that nothing, or no one, would ever undermine our safety and happiness again. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one I wrote with my own hands. The weeks that followed were quiet, but they weren't empty. Melissa felt a new rhythm in her life, one she controlled. Each morning she woke up without the gnawing fear that Tanya's lies might surface again. She spent time with Noah in a way she never had before, teaching him games, helping with homework, and sharing quiet moments in the garden. Melissa also reconnected with people who truly cared. Old friends, neighbors, and even family who had respected her boundaries all noticed the change. There was no revenge in her heart anymore, only a clear understanding of who belonged in her life. Tanya faded into the background, irrelevant and powerless. One evening, Melissa reflected on everything she had endured. 15 years of friendship, so many memories, and yet one person's betrayal almost cost her sense of self. But now, she had regained it fully. She could laugh freely, love fully, and trust selectively, without fear. She made a list of the lessons learned, not out of bitterness, but for growth. Boundaries are not walls, they're lifelines. Trust is earned, not assumed. And self-respect is non-negotiable. Melissa and Jason planned a small celebration for Noah's birthday. The house was filled with laughter, color, and warmth, the very things Tanya had tried to overshadow. Watching her son blow out his candles, Melissa realized she had reclaimed more than a home, she had reclaimed her life. At night, she wrote in her journal one final time about Tanya. Not anger. Not pain. Only clarity. She had survived manipulation, betrayal, and emotional drain, and emerged stronger, wiser, and deeply at peace. The chapter with Tanya was over, but the story of her life was just beginning. Melissa understood that happiness isn't a place or a person, it's a state of being you fight for every day. And now, she was ready for whatever came next.